Good evening, everyone. My name is Kyle Roy. I'm a communications supervisor on our public involvement team at the North Central Texas Council of Governments, or COG, as many of you know us. And it is 6:30, so we're going to go ahead and get things started here. And before we get too much into the air quality portion that we're all here for, I did just want to go over a couple things. I said we're the Council of Governments. We're going to have a quick intro slide, a few intro slides on that here, to, just for anyone who's unfamiliar with us. And if you could all help us out by, if you're participating on your computer, if you could enter your name and organizational affiliation, just so we know who's on the call with us. And I want to go ahead and move to an agenda slide here. So I mentioned we'll have some slides on what is COG, and those will be presented by Taylor Benjamin on the public involvement team with me. And then we'll have a section on Air Quality 101, and then we'll get into the meat of it, the Dallas-Fort Worth Air Quality Improvement Plan. And those slides will be presented by Savannah Nance, an air quality planner here at COG. And then we'll have a portion of time at the end for community feedback. We have some discussion questions for you, and we'll also have a couple of polling questions sprinkled throughout our presentation here, just to make sure we're getting some good information from you guys. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to Taylor, and so she can talk to us about what is COG. Taylor, go ahead.
Hi, my name is Taylor Benjamin. I am a communications specialist here at NCTCOG. So NCTCOG is a voluntary association for local governments. We're established to help assist in regional planning. NCTCOG's purpose is to strengthen both the individual and collective power of local governments. We have 228 member governments. These include 16 counties, 169 cities, 19 school districts, and 24 special districts. So what does NCTCOG do? One of our main goals is to strengthen individual and collective power of local governments. And we are a federally mandated local decision-making body that is responsible for overseeing the metropolitan transportation planning process. Our departments include aging services, economic development, emergency preparedness, environment and development, NCT 911, public safety, regional data, transportation, and workforce solutions. So what does an MPO do? An MPO oversees the region's transportation planning, helping to facilitate collaborations between governments, interested parties, and residents in the planning process. We are governed by the Regional Transportation Council, which is made up of 45 elected officials and representatives from local governments and local transportation providers. NCTCOG's Transportation Department provides staff assistance and support to the RTC to implement transportation planning projects. An MPO collaborates with federal, state, and local government to reflect the region's shared vision for transportation growth. This vision includes guiding the development of multimodal transportation plans and programs, determining the allocation of federal, state, and regional transportation funds, selecting transportation projects, or recommending projects for state funding. We coordinate with the Texas Department of Transportation, the federal government, NTAA, or the North Texas Tollway Authority, and other transit agencies throughout the region. This ensures that the metropolitan planning area complies with state, federal laws and regulations on transportation and air quality.
Thank you, Taylor. My name is Savannah Nance. Kyle introduced me earlier. I'm with the North Central Texas Council of Governments on our Clean Fuels and Energy team, and I'm an air quality planner. Before we get into some Air Quality 101 and then the development of the Dallas-Fort Worth Air Quality Improvement Plan, Kyle mentioned that we're interested in running some polls. If you are on the phone, you may not be able to participate, so apologies. But if you've joined via Zoom, we're going to launch a poll right now. And first off, just to get you guys kind of acclimated, First question is, have you been keeping your New Year's resolutions? And then we're asking what county do you live in, and then what county do you work in? And this is just to give us an idea of who all is attending and what part of the region is being represented. As Taylor mentioned, we do cover 16 counties across all of North Texas, so we have a big area, so just want to know who has come out tonight to give us some feedback. So I'm going to let this run for probably about 30 seconds. And then we will end it and we can share the results with you all to see it. And I believe Kyle did ask everyone, if you can, to put your name and then who you're with in the chat, just if you're able to do so. We really appreciate that. Okay. Gonna leave it open for maybe 15 more seconds. All right, I'm going to end the poll and then share the results. If you are on the Zoom, you should be able to see the results now. See, over half of everyone did not make a New Year's resolution. Definitely understand that. They're difficult to keep, but congratulations to the 10 or so people who are keeping their resolutions. Looks like we have Collin, Dallas, Denton, and Ellis County represented, and Tarrant County represented today. So that's great, and appreciate you all coming out and coming to talk to us. So I'm going to stop sharing, but we'll have another poll later in the presentation focused more on air quality issues that we'll ask you all to answer again. All right. Kyle, will you go to the next slide, please? So you are all here to provide input on the Dallas-Fort Worth Air Quality Improvement Plan, and we wanted to provide you with some information on what kind of air quality and air pollution are we looking at. So we are concerned with both local air pollution and greenhouse gases, and we hope to address both of those in the plan that we develop. So not to spend too much time getting into the weeds, but whenever we talk about local air pollution, we're referring to criteria pollutants that the EPA has identified as harmful to human health. And those are regulated from the National Ambient Air Quality Standards. So in Dallas-Fort Worth, we are in non-attainment, meaning we do not meet the standard. We have too much ground level ozone in several counties. And we're doing great on lead and carbon monoxide and nitrogen oxides, which is good. We do not know if there's a chance, because EPA revisits the science regularly, that there may be a new standard set for particulate matter, so we may become in non-attainment for that. And then we are in partial non-attainment for one county, Navarro County, for sulfur dioxide, just due to an aggregate plant that's out there. So whenever we say local air pollution, we mean that. So those are pollutants that when there is a high amount of them, they're impacting our health locally. We also want to address greenhouse gases, which are gases that trap heat in the atmosphere, resulting in warming on the surface. And so whenever there's a lot of greenhouse gases, they affect the entire world, and not just us locally, even though there can be local impacts from changes in weather or things like that. And greenhouse gases are carbon dioxide, methane, nitrous oxide, and fluorinated gases. So just wanted everyone to see that those are different, and we're hoping to address both of them. Next slide. So I'm going to run through the criteria pollutants relatively quickly. So ground level ozone, as I mentioned, one of those criteria pollutants that cause local health impacts. We have 10 counties that do not meet this standard for those, meaning we have too much. And those counties are in red on the map. And there's a lot of respiratory issues with ground level ozone. So coughing, sore throat, airways, and lung diseases. And the way ground level ozone is formed is through the combination of sunlight, volatile organic compounds, and what's called oxides of nitrogen. And that's how ground level ozone is formed. Remember the oxides of nitrogen because that's going to come back later in the presentation. Next slide. Particulate matter is the criteria pollutant that we may become in non-attainment for, depending on the EPA's review of what is a safe amount. And particulate matter comes in two sizes, particulate matter 10 and particulate matter 2.5. The diagram on the right-hand side of your screen has a demo showing the different sizes, roughly comparison to a human hair. And that can come from soot, spores, pollen, and more. Particulate matter also has respiratory impacts, but it also can cause cardiovascular issues as well. So definitely want to make sure that we have a safe amount of that in the region. Next slide. Sulfur dioxide, this is the criteria pollutant that we are in partial non-attainment in one county for, Navarro County. It's primarily from industrial facilities and fossil fuels and also causes respiratory issues. Next slide. So this slide is a little busy, but what we wanted to show you was that on the left-hand side, that is the nitrogen oxides, or NOx, which is what causes, in combination with sunlight and volatile organic compounds, ground level ozone to form. So think of the left-hand graph as essentially what is causing our ground level ozone issues, and then the right-hand graph is where are the greenhouse gases being produced. So you'll notice there's a huge overlap in the on-road mobile sources, but there's also in the nitrogen oxides, off-road mobile point sources and area sources, and then oil and gas. So definitely a need to address all sectors in our plan: transportation, energy, industrial facilities, and more. And then on the right-hand side, it's the same where it's on-road mobile, it's energy, which is residential use, commercial use, industrial use, and then solid waste and wastewater are the little yellow sliver on the greenhouse gas side. One thing I did want to point out is that the nitrogen oxides is measured in tons per day, and then the carbon dioxide or greenhouse gases are measured in carbon dioxide equivalent, and that's over a year. So that 102 million metric tons is annual. If you want to read more, we did provide sources at the bottom of the slide decks, and these slides will be provided to you after, so you can kind of dig in a little bit more and get into the science if you want to understand that more. Next slide. On the previous slide, I did mention that the greenhouse gases are measured in carbon dioxide equivalent, or CO2e. So essentially, each one of those greenhouse gases has a different global warming potential, which is how long it's in the atmosphere. And so one carbon dioxide is not the same as one methane, and carbon dioxide equivalent is kind of how they accumulate those, so they're all together, and to show the impact across different sectors and take into account all four of these different greenhouse gases. So you take a greenhouse gas, you multiply it by its global warming potential, and then that's how you get the carbon dioxide equivalent. So the previous graph includes methane, nitrous oxide, and carbon dioxide. They've just been all equated to be able to compare them in their sources. Next slide. So what is our plan to improve it, and what are we asking you guys to provide feedback on tonight? So we are developing, in collaboration with local governments in the region, the Dallas-Fort Worth Air Quality Improvement Plan, which will be a regional plan for all 16 counties to improve air quality, protect public health, and more. And this plan is supported through funding from the Environmental Protection Agency's Climate Pollution Reduction Grants program. So with the Climate Pollution Reduction Grant program, we accepted funding on behalf of the region to make the 3 deliverables that are in the blue boxes. So a priority climate action plan, a comprehensive climate action plan, and then a status report. And we are considering those 3 to kind of be the stepping stones for us to make a comprehensive Dallas-Fort Worth air quality improvement plan. And with the development of the first plan, the Priority Climate Action Plan, that is due on March 1st, 2024, so in a little over a month, we will be making that available online for everyone to weigh in on. But once we submit that plan, the EPA will make $4.3 billion available in funding to implement measures that are in that Priority Climate Action Plan. So it's a great opportunity for us where we can turn in a list of projects on March 1st, 2024 that the region could do to improve air quality, and then turn around on April 1st, 2024 and ask the Environmental Protection Agency for funding to actually implement those projects. So that's very exciting, and we're very happy you all are here today to give us some feedback about what we could be doing to asking for money for in a couple months. Next slide. One thing I did want to point out is that the EPA had a lot of people participate in developing a plan under the climate pollution reduction grants. So in Texas, we actually have 6 regional plans being developed. And then there's also a statewide plan that is being developed by the Texas Commission on Environmental Quality. So our region is actually going to be covered essentially under 2 plans, the state plan, and then we'll have our own local plan. And the state will have a listening session tomorrow. It is at 10 a.m. if you go to their website, if you're interested in registering and providing feedback. But we think this is very important that both we can develop a plan locally and the state can develop a plan, because there are some things that the state can do and there's that we cannot, and there are some things that can be done at the local level that the state can't do. So we really encourage you all to provide feedback both to us, but also to the state as well. And then we'll, of course, be providing feedback to the state on some of the things that we think they should do as well. I did put the link in the chat to their webpage if you would like to go there to sign up for tomorrow's meeting or send them an email or anything like that. Next slide. So the first deliverable that is due on March 1st is the Priority Climate Action Plan. And that has 5 things in it: a greenhouse gas emissions inventory, which you guys saw a simplified version earlier. We have to get a list of measures, which are projects, programs, or policies that can improve air quality through the reduction of greenhouse gases. We have to do a low-income and disadvantaged communities benefits analysis, which is looking at the potential benefits of disadvantaged communities. We have to make sure that any measures, which are, again, projects and programs that we're proposing, we are able to implement at a local level. So that's the review of authority to implement. And then we have to identify what funding will be used to implement those measures. So some of that funding could come from the EPA, but some of that funding could come from other sources. So the main thing we're here to talk to you guys about tonight is the measure. So what should we be doing to improve air quality? And we have some examples that we'll show you in a moment. Next slide. So the low-income and disadvantaged communities benefits analysis, just in case anyone was curious about what that will contain, we have very specific directions from the Environmental Protection Agency on what they want to see in that, since this is funded through their program. So they asked us to identify low-income and disadvantaged communities using a very specific tool, or 2 tools actually, which is the Climate and Economic Justice Screening Tool and the EJ Screen Tool, which is Environmental Justice. They've asked us to request feedback from low-income and disadvantaged communities. So we have an online survey. We've also been having in-person meetings and virtual meetings like this one. They have recommended or required us to identify climate risks, impacts, and vulnerabilities, and they have reports where we can pull that from. And then based off the measures that we are proposing, they would like us to quantify the approximate greenhouse gas reduction measures. And then finally, we will have to look at what are other benefits that low-income and disadvantaged communities could receive from the implementation of measures. So would we have reduced energy costs, so your utility bills cheaper? Would you have increased access to food, reduction hazardous air pollutants, and more? Next slide. So I mentioned that on April 1st, 2024, we plan to submit an application to the EPA to ask for some funds to implement the measures that we all decide can be developed. And what's really important here is that we can get in between 2 million and 500 million per application. And the North Central Texas Council of Governments does plan to apply on behalf of North Texas. So it's very exciting. There's a lot of opportunity to get a lot of money to do really great work. So definitely don't feel like any idea is too big or too small, because we expect our application will have a lot of different measures that have a lot of different levels of cost and impact. Next slide. So we've been working on this since September-ish of last year, and based off some preliminary feedback from local governments and the public, we have put together a list of potential transportation measures. I do want to flag that this is subject to change based on feedback that we receive, as we're still requesting feedback, and then also what the state does. So I mentioned that the state is also developing a plan, and their plan is, their thinking, going to be focused on industrial operations and electricity generation, and then maybe a little bit in the transportation sector. But as we walk through our potential measures for transportation and energy, if you notice something's missing, feel welcome to tell us, but just know that we might be expecting the state to be taking a leadership role in that. And if the state doesn't, it might be something that we add back into our list. So for transportation, we've kind of split it into 5 groups, which is transit. So more buses, making buses easier to use, adding more micro transit, adding more rail and more. And we have a list of programs under there. For sustainable development, that is things like active transportation investment, which is adding more sidewalks, making sure it's safer to bike places, things like that. Green infrastructure and regional green space, so that is adding more trees, so that way we can suck the carbon out of the air, but also provide more shade to people. Those can be things like community gardens and more. For congestion management, that is focused more on how can we improve roadway operations, so that way there is less congestion, less traffic, so people aren't just sitting there and idling their vehicles for no reason. So that can be things like upgrading traffic signals, so that way whenever you're at a traffic light and there's no one coming from the opposite direction, the light just changes, so you can maybe go straight through and not sit there idling your vehicle. It's also focused on optimizing freight, doing things like improving roadways to make them safer and less likely to cause wrecks, and more. Clean fuels and fuel efficiency measures. So those are essentially how can we make the vehicles that we operate have less emissions coming out of them, so that way they're not harming our air quality. So that can be things like using an alternative or electric vehicle and, paying some money for that. It could also be things like using sustainable aviation fuel in airplanes, or the equipment using different fuels to reduce emissions from there. We also have an other section, which is kind of vague. that could be adopting a tire recycling policy, so trying to make it so people aren't illegally dumping tires and having them on the side of the road, developing some new tools, such as something to monitor air quality, so adding more monitors, or developing carbon footprint. So not all of these would move forward to an implementation grant application. It would likely be a subsection, but wanted to give you guys a list of what we're thinking will be in the plan that we publish on March 1st. Next slide. So for energy sector, we have energy conservation and efficiency program. So that's focused on improving municipal buildings, improving residential buildings, and then providing audits to commercial industrials, upgrading building codes and standards. So buildings being built to a certain standard can actually just naturally make them more efficient. So can be beneficial. More education on energy saving efforts, both for industrial and commercial and for occupants. There are regional distributed and renewable energy programs. So that's a lot of words to essentially say trying to find more renewable electricity, such as solar or wind. And then also performance standards and requirements. So that might be something that is more of the state's jurisdiction, where they're focused on how can we make our electric grid more resilient, and what standards need to be updated for it to be safer for people to not have to worry about during extreme weather events losing electricity or things like that. Next slide. So for agriculture, land use, these are just going to be example measures. So we do have 2 more sectors that we're working on developing, which are agriculture and then water and wastewater and solid waste. So these are just examples. We hope to have a potential list of measures very soon, and some of these do overlap in the transportation sector. You'll notice many projects and programs don't reduce the impact in just one area, they can reduce it in multiple. So doing things like public green space, upgrading landscape ordinances, expanding urban forest, and then also just using less resource intensive landscape design. So that can be like drought efficient plants, zero water lawns where it's focused on minimal watering being needed, or things like that. Next slide. So here's the example for water and wastewater, and then also solid waste. So for water, it could be things like rain catchment programs, providing rebates to install smart water meters for residents, increasing water reuse practices, and then also trying to have energy conservation technology for water utilities companies. So water utility companies actually take a lot of energy just to purify our water. So there's opportunities for improvements there. For solid waste, it can be things like composting, having more education on food waste. It could be more recycling. It can also be capturing the methane that is being produced at landfills and then reusing it, or just diverting it to other areas to help. And that improves smell. It also provides a greenhouse gas reduction. There's a lot of benefit to that. Next slide. So we do have, just wanted to touch on some public input opportunities. So we have been having some in-person open houses. We have the past meetings on there, but the next one coming up is the city of Clyburn, which is next Monday. We have a survey for the general public that is open online until February. So we'll have a link to that if you're interested in going to write down your feedback. If maybe you think of something later on, you can also just email us updates on the project. We have email on our webpage as well. Next slide. So now we're going to get into the actual listening session part. So we have 2 quick polling questions that we wanted to run, and then we have a couple of discussion questions. We are going to ask you guys to raise your hand to speak. So if you're on the Zoom, if you go to the bar at the bottom and hit reactions, you'll see there's a raise hand feature. And just because of the number of people we have on the line, we are going to ask for you to limit your comments to 3 minutes. And if you're not able to get through everything, or you have more feedback you want to give, like I said, we do have a webpage online that you can go ahead and submit those thoughts to. So I'm going to launch the poll really quick, and then we will get into the discussion section. So for this poll, hopefully everyone can see it. The first thing we would like is, which of the following are you most concerned about? So click your priorities. And then we are asking you only pick 3 if possible. And then we're asking, what sectors do you think we should target for the Dallas-Fort Worth Air Quality Improvement Plan? So it can be transportation, energy, water and wastewater, solid waste. Definitely be trying to address all of them, but if there's one that you feel is impacting you more right now, definitely would like to know that. Still see responses trickling in, so just give us about 30 more seconds and then we'll share the results of the poll. All right, I'm going to end the poll and let you all see the responses. So the winner for the most concerned is local air quality, definitely a concern for us too, but a very close second to that is climate change and then public health as well. So thank you all for that. And then for sectors that should be targeted, transportation and energy were tied for 80% votes each. And then it looks like ag and land use were very high as well. So thank you guys for providing that feedback. It's very helpful for us to get some data put together. So I'm going to stop sharing that. Kyle, will you go to the next slide for us? So these are going to be our discussion questions. I already see hands popping up, so thank you. We'll call on you shortly. Appreciate your eagerness. So our discussion questions are, how can the Dallas-Fort Worth Air Quality Improvement Plan reflect the diversity of North Texas? What specific measures could be implemented to benefit low-income and disadvantaged communities? And what have we not covered that you would be interested in discussing? But if you have a very specific comment as well, we do welcome that. But would appreciate if you would try to keep the majority of your comments focused on these 3 questions. So Kyle, can we move forward one more slide? Actually, let's leave those 3 questions up, Kyle. Sorry, go back one more slide. And then Kyle has a timer up, so we are asking that you try to keep your comments limited to 3 minutes. If for some reason you're unable to unmute and provide your input verbally, you are welcome to write your input in the chat. So Jennifer, I think your hand's been up a while, so I'm going to let you go first, Kyle, if you want to start the 3 minutes.
Hi, thanks. My name's Jennifer Quick, living up to the name there with my hand. I'm here on behalf of local environmental organization Livable Arlington, and I want to recommend that the Pollution and Climate Action Plan take strong action on methane emissions from the Barnett Shale, which we know covers a lot of ground in the area that NCTCOG covers. I find it interesting that the results of the poll match up pretty closely with what we see the impact of fracking on in communities. So people mentioned air quality and climate as the top two. Unfortunately, you can solve climate by also working on air quality. So we know that drilling, a lot of people think happened in the past, it's done, but it's actually still happening and it's expanding rapidly in the Barnett Shale. So I think this plan could be a good opportunity to implement some changes for this next round, seeing as local governments are continuing to approve and allow permits to go forward. There's 228 new wells approved in Tarrant County alone since 2021. So there's a lot of action happening. And we also know that the methane released from this process is a key driver of ozone. So there's the connection to air quality, and that air quality is also having an impact on rates of asthma in the county. We have the highest rate in Texas, and we are twice the national rate for children with asthma. And it also leads to a myriad of other health effects like birth outcomes, including preterm births, congenital anomalies, things like that. Recently, the EPA passed a new methane rule, and our action in this plan could address those new rules. We could encourage counties and municipalities to use only electric drilling rigs when they are drilling these wells. We can promote the flyover and or identification of leaking oil and gas equipment. So we have a lot that's getting out there just because equipment's not maintained or checked regularly or monitored. And so increasing standards for that would reduce the amount of methane leaking into our air, creating ozone and poor air. We could encourage all counties and municipalities to require electric motors only instead of gas powered on all operations equipment. So earlier I talked about the electric drilling rigs, but this would be across all of that. And really the EPA rules can serve as a guide to you all as you look at what types of things could be implemented in our area. That's all I have to share.
Thank you, Jennifer. Really appreciate that and some really great points. And thank you to the comments in the chat as well. So feel welcome as, here, like I said, if you're not able to provide comments verbally, welcome to do so virtually. Cynthia Fincher, I believe you are next.
Cynthia, we can't hear you. I believe you're muted.
I am so sorry. Hi, I'm Cynthia Fincher. I'm a mental health provider and very concerned about health effects of the air quality, water quality, of how that affects human health. I also have been part of the Livable Arlington, and we have a lot of concern in Tarrant County about enormous numbers of fracking wells, and they're not being monitored. And so the thing I was interested in your other category was, could we have equipment to monitor where we citizens can actually see how much is actually escaping? Because we don't think they get monitored, and maybe they warn the companies ahead when they're going to come. But a lot of times we citizens, we smell things, we see things. We have a lot of concerns about our health and our neighbors' health. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Cynthia. I will say that the EPA grant is very focused on implementation, so things that actually improve air quality, but we definitely agree that monitors is really important and think that that's something that should be included in the plan, even if we don't end up paying for it with this opportunity. Might find other ways to pay for it. Jackie, that is the next hand I see.
Jackie, if you're speaking, we can't hear you. Are you muted?
might.
There, now maybe I've unmuted myself. The Sierra Club in Fort Worth is very interested in trying to help a neighborhood called Echo Heights, which is trapped in the middle of truck plants. And their life expectancies are lowered by the amount of pollution in their neighborhood. What we were asking for was an increase in the number of monitors, air quality monitors in Fort Worth. Does anyone have any ideas about how we could in fact get the city of Fort Worth to be responsive to our desire for more air quality monitors, or get them funding to put them in?
Thanks, Jackie. We are working with the city of Fort Worth in the development of this plan. I don't know if they have any staff on tonight, but I do believe that I want to speak on behalf of them. They and we both acknowledge the importance of monitoring. But Lori, I see your hand go up. Do you have anything to add to that? And so definitely know that that's a priority for all of us, and really appreciate you bringing it up as well.
Yeah, Savannah, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, great. Yeah, I'll just chime in there that like Savannah said, the monitoring is something that we'll put in the plan, but may not really be the best use, or may not really fit this EPA funding the best, but there is something available from the state called Rider 7 that we have access. So under Rider 7, which is it's a budget rider, that's why it's called Rider 7. For areas that are in near non-attainment for certain pollutants, and our region newly this year will have access to Rider 7 funding for particulate matter monitoring or inventory projects. And so our office is talking with the cities of Dallas and the cities of Fort Worth, because those two counties, Dallas County and Tarrant County, are the two counties in which that money is eligible to be spent, about what kind of monitors and where and things like that. And so those monitors will definitely measure particulate matter, and we'll see what kind of opportunities there are for us to get multi-pollutant measurements. But we definitely hear the concern about monitoring, and if you have specific location recommendations, feel free to drop those in the chat, and we can inventory those for our coordination with the cities.
Okay. How do I drop stuff in the chat?
At the bottom of the screen, if you
Got it,
see
I
those
see it. Thank you.
reaction options, there should be a chat one.
All right, thank you very much.
You're welcome.
And
you.
if you're having trouble with that as well, feel welcome to just email us your feedback as well. Our email's on the website. We have a group email. Paula Day, I believe you are next.
Thank you. I'm a member of Climate Reality, and I also serve on the City of Dallas Environmental Commission. And one of the things I was thinking about is a lot of growth with distribution centers and warehouses in Dallas. And that comes with many problems around trucks idling. So anything that can be done around the idling to lower emissions, but it also, those types of areas offer a lot of opportunity because of the huge flat roofs for rooftop solar and cool roofs. And also they generally have a lot of land around them for trees. So I think, kind of looking at a coordinated approach for those large areas that continue to develop and are often in low income areas, taking sort of a multi-prong approach could do a lot to reduce emissions and improve air qualities in these sort of big developing economic centers. That's the end of my comment.
Great, thank you, Paula. So the next person I have is Cynthia, but Cynthia, I'm not sure if you just didn't lower your hand, or did you have another comment?
I had another comment. I'm also writing it, but I think that monitoring would absolutely reduce, because right now, if these wells are leaking, they can pretend they're not or not deal with it. And if they're only being monitored once a year, bad leaks can happen and, people get sick, but they don't know the cause of it. So I think that like if we actually have monitoring where we can see what they're doing, they could be held account. So I think that would, at least at the fracking well level, I think that would make a really big difference.
Thank you. Jackie, I see your hand is also still raised. Did you have a second comment or did you just not lower it?
Oh, well,
I can lower
I wonder, I didn't catch whom you said were the best people in Fort Worth to talk to about trying to get the city to move forward with more stringent air quality efforts.
So we are working with the city of Fort Worth. The rider that Lori was referring to, the Rider 7, that is funding from the Texas Commission on Environmental Quality. I believe that's, where they can provide funding to help with monitoring. I believe the city of Fort Worth is aware of that, but we could follow up if you put your email in the chat and send you information about that opportunity.
Thank you so much. I appreciate that.
Sure. The next hand I see is Janet Mattern.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, I concur with a lot of the other comments about reducing the methane emissions from the fracking industry because we are an experiment here in North Texas because there is no other area that has so many fracking wells in such a highly populated area. So we do need to take better care to make sure we have those emissions reduced. In addition, we need to reduce gas emissions and capture them from the Fort Worth Southeast landfill, as well as the Village Creek water treatment plants and any other large industries that are producing emissions in our Metroplex area. And I do agree with the many comments that have been made about increasing air monitoring. I do not think that we should be relying, and I do not think that the COG should be using industry reported emissions. It is much better and more accurate to have air monitoring stations that would provide the sum of all emissions rather than just the locally industry reported, which may not include all the emissions and may not be accurate. As we hear from TCEQ, I don't think that they are accurate because they, it's like they want to emit only that amount, but we don't know for sure if they do. And so, and we need to make sure that the air monitoring stations include not just the greenhouse gases, but the other toxins emitted. In addition, I like small transit, like small vans that have more routes, more frequent stops. I've seen this successfully implemented in Egypt. And so if they can do it there, we can do it here. We do need more rapid transit, more money for the rapid transit system, less money for the local highways. We have so many billions of dollars in highway projects. We should have that more into rapid transit. Regarding sidewalks, I like sidewalks, but we should use non-concrete alternatives so that they would reduce the concentration of heat in our city. And then also we need to provide more incentives to keep new construction within the city and in already developed areas that have had construction, and keep the wild areas in Tarrant County and our DFW area wild for keeping the climate free. And I guess that's the end of my time. Thank you.
Great, thank you, Janet. Appreciate your comments. And I will say that it wasn't super clear because our naming wasn't super good, but low impact concrete, so that absorbs less heat, but also is better for the environment is definitely something we are looking into. So thank you for bringing that up. Next hand I see is Mark.
Hi, Savannah. Can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
Very good. Thank you. My name is Mark Rutledge. I'm the CEO of Mozart DevCo. We are a hydrogen development company. I'd like to make a comment that's a little more future thinking than the present air quality issues that have been brought up today. And that is in the transportation sector. Someone earlier mentioned zero emission battery vehicles. Like those are fine and good. They are not a complete solution. I think we need to be looking towards building out an infrastructure for hydrogen fuel cell vehicles. Those are not something off in the future. They're here. My company is developing a plant in another state that will be generating fuel grade hydrogen from municipal solid waste. It's carbon negative. We permanently sequester carbon dioxide, and we so things like 30 to 1, and we avoid much more than that. So those kind of things are here. And if you look around, even in our own state, Houston Metro, the largest metropolitan transit authorities in the country, have decided to go all hydrogen fuel cell, over 4,000 buses over time with their fleet for their zero emission vehicles. And the reason for that is the capital expenditure for a fuel cell bus is roughly equal to that of a battery electric vehicle up front. But each additional battery bus adds incremental cost to the capital expenditure, where it flattens out for hydrogen fuel cell. You build the fueling and the maintenance, and any additional bus doesn't add capital expense. So these are the kind of things that I think we should mix into our long-term transportation plan. Toyota already makes a passenger vehicle on hydrogen. They were going to be making a truck soon. They're already on the road in Southern California. You won't see them here because there's nowhere for any consumer to fill up their tank with hydrogen. I'm going to be changing that in another state, but not here. But these are the kind of things I think we need to add to the mix. Lastly, before my time is up, the only emission from a hydrogen fuel cell vehicle is water vapor. So it's a very clean system, and hydrogen itself, there are clean ways and dirty ways to produce hydrogen. There's a lot of clean ways. The one that my company is employed is very clean. It's like I say, we take municipal solid waste and we process the hydrogen, and the only output is hydrogen, a little bit of trace nitrogen into the air, and powdered limestone, which is a result of the carbon capture. So those are my 2 cents. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Mark. We have a couple comments in the chat. So, oh, actually, I see Rita's hand. So I will hold on reading the comments in the chat to anyone that's online and let Rita go.
Thanks, Savannah. And I know there's a lot of smart people on this phone who should pipe up that I know. First of all, thanks for having this virtual meeting. I think the numbers make it real successful and easy for people to do. A few things I want to point out if people didn't have time to read the entire COG list. I am excited about decarbonizing lawn equipment. As we know, the legislature pretty much put the brakes on any ordinances on that. So if we could do decarbonizing lawn equipment, which puts as much pollution out as an F-150 pickup, with carrots like incentives instead of sticks, I'm all for that. I'm going to kind of bring up a bunch of things tonight. Another thing, especially in light of the explosions we're seeing with homes and so forth, we need to do something as cities to require Atmos to fix their leaking infrastructure, as it's quite a public safety hazard. That needs to be cleaned up. For the sake of areas like West Dallas, and other areas that have a lot of concrete batch plant operations going on. We need to do something about those batch plants and the particulate matter that comes from those plants. And we need to do something about the idling of all our construction vehicles, especially at job sites, because that's only contributing to the poor air quality. I noticed in the COG plan that it's, of course, very strong on transportation measures, which COG does best. I think there needs to be more waste and more water concepts in there, including we need to fix the leaking infrastructure for our water mains, which we've seen breaking in the last few weeks. It takes a lot of energy to pump water. It would serve dual purposes if we fix that leaking water infrastructure. We need to employ combined heat and power systems to retrofit wastewater treatment facilities because of all the methane and off-gassing we're getting from those facilities. We need cities to actually audit and take serious their conservation water plans and have the state actually evaluate those, because some of them are paper tigers that just sit on a shelf. Thank you.
Great, thank you, Rita. Appreciate it. So Laura, you want to make a comment?
Yeah, I was just gonna flag to Mark. I put in the chat, and I'm seeing there's a little bit of back and forth that started up on the hydrogen topic. We will likely not be seeking funding for any hydrogen infrastructure under the EPA opportunity here, because we just received an award from the Federal Highway Administration of $70 million to build up to 5 hydrogen fueling stations. So we feel pretty good about that opportunity. Those stations will be designed for heavy duty trucks. We've got months and months of process steps that we have to go through with the funding agency before we'll be able to start work on that project in earnest. But I did put a link to where companies that are working in the hydrogen space can sign up to get notices when we start looking for collaborators for the goods and services that we'll need for that. And then also to stay in the loop for anybody who's interested on the transportation alternative fuel side, our Dallas Forward Clean Cities webpage under Get Involved is a good place to just kind of stay in the loop on projects that we've got going on. So, thank you.
Thank you, Lori. So I don't see any hands, so I'm going to read out some of the chats that comments so everyone can hear. So native plants and trees so that the trees survive as our weather changes. That's a great comment, very true. Some more comments about air quality and public health that are impacted from gas extractions and drilling operations, especially in urban areas, and comments about how monitoring and improvements in monitoring could improve air quality and help drive decision making. Our team, Sue Alvarez and Lori Clark, put a couple of resources in the chat for everyone in case you need it. Also, efficiency of home air conditioning and heating systems. That is very true, especially older systems can be very inefficient. Insulation at homes as well can be an issue. And then also connecting electric vehicles and roofs into an energy grid so we are not wasting solar and wind energy. So that is, for anyone who's unaware, referred to as vehicle to grid, which is essentially using your electric vehicle as a big battery that can both store and then release energy. And then also some discussion about hydrogen production. And I think Mark mentioned that depending on the source of hydrogen, how it's created, it can impact the carbon impacts of that. Janet asked for a copy of the information in the chat. Janet, I might need clarification on what information you're looking for, but if you're referring to the slide deck, we'll be sending it out after this meeting. And then Patra said, do any of the measures address clean energy permitting reform or electrification? I don't believe so, but Lori, did you have a comment on that?
Not on that, on something else. Whenever you're done.
Yeah, I don't think we have anything on clean energy permitting reform, but if you have recommendations, we're definitely open to hear them, Patra.
Oh, actually, I do have a little bit of a comment on that. Oh, and by the way, y'all, my name's Lori Clark. I'm one of the managers at the North Central Texas Council of Government. So that's why I keep chiming in. The state, the TCEQ staff who are leading the state's effort do have some strategies in mind around grid level improvements and some energy storage that would enable more renewable or some transmission improvements that could also enable more renewable power generation to get to the markets where it's in most demand. I don't know if that really fits into what Patra is mentioning about clean energy permitting reform or electrification. If you could give us a little bit more information on that, that would be helpful. Permitting reform is, there are some challenges with the dynamics, the state and local dynamics in Texas right now, but something that we can look at. But yeah.
We will make sure to send out any links that are shared in the chat and the follow-up email as well, just as some resources, just so everyone has those in addition to the slide deck. Rita had a question about implementation within 5 years. Yes, that is what we are mostly looking for this first deliverable that is due on March 1st, 2024, so 6 weeks. But the second deliverable that we put together for the EPA is going to be focused on long term, so all the way out to 2050. So we are, to a certain extent, collecting feedback from you all on both. So don't feel like, you need to find out right now if something can be done in the next 5 years or not. If you have ideas, it's totally fine. But anything that maybe isn't feasible within 5 years, we would just put into the second plan that's developed next year. So lets us get ahead of that.
Savannah, one other thing I wanted to chime in on, and this will be in the email follow-up that we'll send because we'll include the links to different resources. But several of you, when you introduced yourselves, indicated that you're here with different environmental organizations or other community-based organizations. And one of our other staff, Sue Alvarez, put a link to a new program that EPA just released called, well, now I'm losing it, Climate Justice Community Change Grants, or EPA Community Action Grants. And it's specifically looking for consortiums of community-based organizations to take local action. So it's not a program that we are necessarily well suited for because we're local government, but it is a program that many of you might be well suited for, especially if you were to collaborate. And it sounds like there are some common concerns across multiple organizations. So when we get that email follow-up to y'all, I would just encourage you to please take a close look at that and see if there's some opportunity there.
See a comment that says, in England, they're using wastewater monitoring to look for pathogens, which could be a side benefit of some of the programs. It's a great idea. And then electrification could include investments in renewables and adding charging stations for EVs or electric vehicles. That's also a great idea. So these 3 discussion questions are, for the most part, what we have for the rest of this afternoon. So definitely would invite anyone that hasn't yet provided their feedback to either raise their hands or put some comments in the chat. We're here to listen, so no bad ideas. And if you're on the phone and you've dialed in and you're not able to raise your hand, feel welcome to just unmute yourself and introduce yourself. I know if you dial in on the phone, it can be hard to make comments. We have a comment in the chat that community solar to help energy bills for renters, reduce those, electric vehicle rebates, and then EV incentives like no tolls would be very helpful. Also, adding in community gardens to help with food deserts, and then also promoting local agriculture to develop food resources. Great idea. And any kind of addition of agriculture definitely will help with the carbon as well. Is there any interest in us going back to the slides we showed earlier to go over the potential measures and projects that we showed? If so, we would be happy to do that. I do see a couple other comments in the chat, so I'll go ahead and read those. Petra, on how is COG coordinating with other entities effort to take advantage of regional things and avoid duplication. I think that's part of the benefit of us creating a regional plan is we're coordinating with all the counties and that are interested in participating, Tarrant, Dallas, and more. And we're definitely looking into what all is being done in the region, but also what isn't being done that we need more funding to make sure we're not duplicating. That's definitely something we're working on as much as we can. But if there are local efforts going on that maybe you think we do or don't know about, definitely feel welcome to tell us, because we know a lot, but there could definitely be things going on in the region that we could either build on or add into our plan as well. Crystal recommends connecting low-income families to grants, rebates, and loans for building electrification and heat pumps. It's a great idea. Definitely important for us to reduce some of those emissions from buildings and then electricity generation, and then also that reduces energy costs. For the URL where our chat will be posted, the video will be posted on our webpage. We'll probably add it to our YouTube channel and then link it from our webpage. So that would be the same webpage that you registered at, which is publicinput.com/DFWAQIP. So that's where you can go and view that. Curbside composting programs, great recommendation as well from Paula. Request for more public health impact research. So definitely can look into that. See some more comments about creating mass transit. Great feedback. Acknowledge that there are some fragments and a need to create a regional system. And Emily, I see a question in the chat on meeting, apologizing for hopping in late. This meeting is being recorded and we will post it on the webpage after the meeting. So we can email everyone whenever that's made available. But we are still accepting comments on the discussion questions that are being shown right now. So if anyone has questions or comments and joined late and would like to raise their hand, you are welcome to do so. I'm not sure if you will be able to see the chat along with the video or not. We'd have to look at the recording, but we can do an export and we could write down the questions and comments that were put together in the chat and attach it to the meeting invite. So we'll figure out a way to document that and make sure it's included. So everyone's comments already been answered or addressed. Comment from Kevin, as you solidify measures, focus on strategies that can clearly be measured to show measurable project. So great feedback. Jackie, on communication with us further, we highly recommend that if you're not already, you sign up on our webpage to be notified of email updates. As we post the first draft of our plan, on March 1st, 2024, the Priority Climate Action Plan, we will make that available for everyone to look at and provide comments on. And then we're going to continue to have engagement opportunities, both virtual and surveys, after that initial plan is published, for everyone to provide feedback to us as we create the secondary plan, which is due in summer of 2025. So please make sure that you're signed up for our email blast so that way you're notified whenever we have more engagement opportunities, and then also you're notified whenever we post things. Emily did put a comment in the chat recommending that we have taller buildings for commerce and more widespread green spaces, and then also add public transit. It's great feedback. I see some people dropping off, and I know we're getting close to 8. So really quick, Kyle, can you advance to our contact side so everyone can have that information if they would like it? So here's our contact side. You can scan the QR code to go to our webpage. And then on that webpage, you can sign up for emails, you can take a survey. There's also an email for you to provide us feedback. So definitely encourage everyone to make sure you're on that webpage. You most likely registered on there for tonight's listening session, as that will be where we were posting additional information in the future. And then I think the next slide has our contact information, Kyle. It could be. So definitely contact us if you have questions or comments or you think of anything else. We also have a group and email on the webpage as well. Just wanted everyone to have that information, but we are good to hang on for a couple more minutes if anyone has any questions or comments about the effort. Cynthia, I see you immediately left a comment about making sure we're protecting Tarrant County from abandoning wells. It's great feedback. I think that's something that the state is looking at addressing in their plan, but it's definitely something we can look into as well.
I will, I'm sure many of you already are aware, but when it comes to all the oil and gas stuff, especially the regulation of wells after the fact, that does fall into the jurisdiction of the Railroad Commission. And I highly recommend that everybody make sure that your concerns are relayed to the Railroad Commission directly. So we'll drop a link to their site in the chat and include that in the follow-up as well.
Kyle, do you mind backing up to the question slide? Now that everyone has the, I'm gonna say last call maybe for questions or comments. Okay, well, looks like we can end a little bit early. Thank you all for coming out and attending and providing some feedback tonight. Appreciate you taking your dinner time with us. We do have the survey online. We encourage everyone to fill out. And if you have some thoughts that aren't included on the survey, feel welcome to reach out to us as well. So we're going to end the recording and it's going to kick everyone out of the meeting, but expect to follow up with the recording and then also an export of the comments and the PowerPoint in the next week or so. Thank you.